also seen indications that there's leadership problems inside China. India is a country that we want to be friends with. Prevent China from thinking that they can take Taiwan over very quickly.
China is threatening reunification by force, and Taiwan is preparing for a Chinese invasion. Will the world stand by and watch if China attacks Taiwan? Why should New Delhi care about the One China policy when Beijing does not respect India's sovereignty? Tonight, we'll raise all these questions as we bring you an exclusive interview with the Foreign Minister of Taiwan, Dr. Joseph Wu. He spoke to us about a range of issues: the attack on a Taiwanese diplomat in Fiji, the safety of Taiwanese diplomats the world over, including in India, China's military aggression. Why is Xi Jinping doing what he is? Why does he want a war? Why does he want to distract the people of China? What does he fear? Does China face a leadership crisis? What is the future of Taiwan's relationship with India? What's the potential and political position? On Gravitas tonight, we will bring you answers to all these questions and more. Also on the show, has Pakistan plunged into a civil war? The army reportedly abducted the police chief in Sindh. We'll tell you what happened next. 9 people die in South Korea after taking a flu shot, reigniting fears of vaccines. Making a COVID vaccine is not going to be enough. People may not want to take it. Air pollution killed 5 lakh newborns in 2019. 5 lakh. A new report throws up disturbing data on the silent killer. India and sub-Saharan Africa are the hotspots. Winning a 2/3 majority in parliament will not be enough. You need a referendum to change the constitution. Sri Lanka's top court has told the government there. We begin as always with Gravitas Global Headlines.
7 people, including 2 students, will appear before an anti-terror judge in France for a decision on criminal charges over the killing of teacher Samuel Paty. Meanwhile, France pays tribute to the 47-year-old history teacher beheaded for showing cartoons of Prophet Muhammad during a lecture on freedom of expression. Protesters gather in Bangkok for the 8th straight day, despite a state of emergency banning public gatherings and the arrest of several top leaders of the reformist movement that calls for Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha to step down and for reforms to the monarchy. The Nigerian president today appealed for calm after protesters in the city of Lagos were dispersed by numerous gunshots. The gunshots were fired in an attempt to break the protest movement against police brutality. Thousands of Nigerians have taken to the streets against the special anti-robbery squad that has been accused of extortion, harassment, torture, and murders. The country disbanded the police unit on October 11th, but the protests continue demanding law enforcement reforms. A coordinated attack by the ADF and ISIS leads to more than 1,300 captive fighters fleeing from jail in the restive Eastern Democratic Congo. Active since the 1990s, the Islamist ADF group has killed over 1,000 civilians since the start of 2019 alone, according to UN estimates. The Arakan army has claimed responsibility for abducting 3 candidates of Aung San Suu Kyi's party ahead of the November 8 election, calling for the release of detained student activists in exchange of releasing the 3 politicians. Reports suggest that the trials of the Oxford-AstraZeneca COVID vaccine will resume in the US after being halted over a case of serious illness to one of the participants. The resumption comes after the US drug regulator completes its review of the case, raising hopes of early approval to one of the leading vaccine candidates in the world. NASA's OSIRIS-REx spacecraft has landed on the asteroid Bennu in a mission to collect space dust. aimed at bringing the largest sample to Earth from space since the Apollo mission. In an accidental discovery, scientists have found a new organ in the human throat, a set of salivary glands in the upper part of the throat. The glands are believed to be lubricating and moistening the upper throat behind the nose and mouth. Manchester United made the perfect start to the new UEFA Champions League season by beating last season's finalists, Paris Saint-Germain, 2-1. Bruno Fernandes put the Red Devils ahead in the French capital through a penalty in the first half, but PSG responded well after the break and drew level courtesy of an own goal from Anthony Martial in the 55th minute. However, Marcus Rashford's fine 87th minute strike gave the visitors a crucial 3 points. This is the first time PSG have lost at home in the group stage in 25 games, going back to December 2004. Lionel Messi scored in a record-equaling 16th Champions League season as Barcelona thrashed Hungarian side Ferencváros 5-1. The last European outing for the Spanish Giants was the 8-2 humiliation to Bayern Munich in August, but a new-look side was rampant. Messi's penalty opener was followed by goals from Ansu Fati and Philippe Coutinho, either side of halftime. The only negative for the Catalans was a red card to Gerard Piqué, which allowed the visitors to pull a goal back. But Barcelona were still able to close out the match with late strikes from the 17-year-old Pedri Ousmane Dembélé.
Is China planning to invade Taiwan? Yesterday we told you about China's military build-up near Taiwan. Fighter jets, missiles, tanks, the best in PLA's arsenal has been deployed in Guangdong. Tonight we bring you Taiwan's assessment. How do they see this? They are bracing themselves for a military attack from Beijing. Earlier today I spoke with the Foreign Minister of Taiwan, Dr. Joseph Wu. He told us about China's military activities near the island. Dr. Joseph Wu said that China is no longer trying to hide its intentions. A potential invasion of Taiwan cannot be ruled out. Who will defend Taiwan? The primary responsibility, he said, is that of Taipei. They should defend themselves, but they're also counting on friends to help, countries like the US and India. So Taipei is reaching out to New Delhi, extending a hand of friendship. They want to join hands with the Modi government and fight China's military aggression together. But India does not have formal diplomatic ties with Taiwan. How does this relationship work? What is its future? I'll bring you the interview in just a bit, but first let me bring you up to speed with what's happening on the border between India and China. The standoff, as I said, continues. So does the war of words. On Monday, India revealed that its forces had captured a PLA soldier, a Chinese soldier, a corporal who had strayed across the disputed border. His name is Wong Ya Long. Today he was returned to the Chinese side. India released the Chinese soldier, sent him back safely to the other side of the border. This comes just before another round of commander-level talks between the two sides. They're likely to happen later this week. The Chinese soldier was apprehended in the Demchok area of Ladakh. When the Indian soldiers found him, he was disoriented. When India disclosed the corporal's detention, it said that he is being given food, water, clothes, oxygen and medical care. This is a goodwill gesture. This is proof of the Indian Army's honorable conduct even when faced with a sly adversary like China. Will China reciprocate this goodwill? The past conduct of Beijing gives us no hope whatsoever. China has repeatedly betrayed India. The border standoff has been on for more than 150 days now. Both sides have had several rounds of dialogue. The PLA has spoken of peace but provoked war. And it's doing the same in the case of Taiwan. It is sending soldiers close to the islands, conducting military drills, sending jets to violate the Taiwanese airspace, deploying missiles to target Taiwan. Take a look at what the Global Times is reporting. This came out 2 days back. It says that the PLA has deployed its most advanced hypersonic missile close to Taiwan. It is called the DF-17. and it's been deployed to the southeast coast of China. The missile is pointing towards Taiwan. Look at the headline one more time. Analyst predicts next year for Taiwan reunification by force. Reunification by force. The message could not have been clearer. Taiwan is preparing for a military onslaught from the Chinese. It is also drawing the world's attention to Chinese military aggression, which brings us to the question, will the world stand by and watch if China attacks Taiwan? What will India do? Can Delhi start by recognizing Taiwan as a country? Why should India care so much about the One China policy if Beijing does not respect India's sovereignty? If there was ever a time to join hands with Taipei, it is now. India has a partnership. That partnership should be formalized, and this would go beyond military interests. A partnership with Taiwan will help in India's decoupling with China. Today, the foreign minister of Taiwan told WION that Taiwanese investors who leave China see India as an attractive destination, and their government will help them set up a base in India. He spoke about China's military threat to the region, the violence that Chinese diplomats indulged in Fiji. He said Taiwan is willing to testify against China over the cover-up in Wuhan, and he shared his favorite Bollywood films with us. Here's an excerpt from that exclusive conversation. Dr. Wu, welcome to WION.
Well, thank you very much, Palki.
A new report says that China is building up its military presence to invade Taiwan. What is your assessment?
It is true that the Chinese are building up their military, targeting at Taiwan. Not only they try to build up their missile capabilities, but they also try to build up their conventional capabilities. And I think the target is Taiwan. It's no doubt about it. They're also trying to intensify their military activities around Taiwan. In the last couple of months, we saw the Chinese military activities, especially the activities in the air, have been increasing tremendously. They not only try to intrude into our air identification zone, they also try to cut through the medium line of the Taiwan Strait, which has been safeguarding peace and stability and status quo for decades. So this is very alarming. I think what is even more alarming is that the Chinese government does not hide its intention that they may want to use force against Taiwan. So we have been trying to beef up our own defense capabilities to prevent China from thinking that they can take Taiwan over very quickly. And we also try to procure military hardware from other countries like the United States. And we also try to work together with other countries for security areas. So this is the way we try to strengthen our own status to prevent China from launching attacks against Taiwan. But I think the most important thing is that if you look at the situation around China, the Chinese military is also intruding into the disputed area in East China Sea. They also try to build up their military installations in the South China Sea. And there was also border conflict with India, where the Chinese have been increasing their military deployment. And this is very alarming that China seems to be expanding its force of authoritarianism. And if you look at inside China, they also put a hard hand, a very heavy hand, in Xinjiang, in Tibet, and now in Mongolia. They are trying to prevent the Mongolians, especially the young students, from learning their own language. So this is very alarming. And if you add Hong Kong into this equation, we see that China is trying to export its authoritarian order. And Taiwan happens to be on the front line, and we have to be very careful. There's a traditional wisdom about authoritarianism. Whenever they have domestic difficulty, they would try to find a scapegoat outside their country to create crisis, to divert domestic attention. And Taiwan may be a very convenient scapegoat for the Chinese government, and we need to be careful, and we need to build more friendship with other countries. And India is a country that we want to be friends with.
What is the domestic difficulty that Xi Jinping is facing, according to you?
There are quite a few difficulties China is facing right now. The first, of course, the trade war in between the United States and China, and I think it's causing the Chinese economy to slow down. And the second is the pandemic. It's the origin of, China is the origin of the COVID-19. And I think COVID-19 is causing economic slowdown internationally. And of course, China relied on trade with other countries, and it's causing China economic slowdown as well. And in the last couple of months, there was a very serious flooding in central part and moving to northern part of China. So the general economic slowdown for an authoritarian country is going to deprive the top leadership from the legitimacy that the government is able to improve the livelihood of the people. So this has become a very serious situation for the leadership. And we have also seen indications that there's leadership problems inside China. This doesn't seem to me that the leadership is able to control everything. There are other factions or other leaders that may be willing to challenge the top leadership. So putting all this together, China is facing some difficulties.
Do you think there are countries that will stand up for Taiwan and actively participate and support you? And which will those countries be, according to you?
This is our position. Taiwan is our country, and Taiwan government and Taiwan military has the sole responsibility of defending our own country. And we have said it again and again, that the government, the people are determined to defend themselves. And that is the reason why we spend more in our military. We try to buy more weapons for our own protection, and we try to train our military according to modern principles. So this is the way we try to show to the international community that Taiwan is absolutely determined to protect itself. And of course, if we are not able to protect ourselves, or if we are not determined to protect ourselves, we have no right to ask other countries to provide support to Taiwan when it comes to the absolute necessary point. But I do see that the United States has been making its presence known in this region. They have shown to other countries in this part of the world that their Navy or even their Air Force is here to deter the aggression. But I need to point to the fact that Taiwan is responsible for its own defense, and we are absolutely determined to defend ourselves. And it's not just defending ourselves in military terms. I should also say that Taiwan is a democracy and proud to be a democracy. And what we see is that the Chinese authoritarianism is trying to make an outward expansion. And under these kinds of circumstances, Taiwan is on the front line. And we protect ourselves, not just to protect our own sovereignty and protect our own territory. We are also trying to protect freedom and democracy. And we believe that we have that responsibility to safeguard democracy and freedom from being overrun by authoritarianism.
Can China be held accountable in a court of law for such a pandemic cover-up? And if yes, will Taiwan testify against Beijing?
Well, Taiwan is not one of those countries that is affected very seriously. And if the international community wants to look at the origin of the problem and they want to do a more thorough investigation, that is something that would be very helpful in preventing the next pandemic from taking place. And if there's a need for Taiwan experts to testify or to join in this investigation, I think Taiwan will be very happy to do it. And when you mention about the countries that are being affected very seriously, look at Europe, look at the United States, Brazil, and look at India. These are all the countries that are being very affected very seriously. And of course, we certainly hope that the pandemic can subside very soon so that the economic activities or people's livelihood can resume in a normal way. But before that, I think we need to think of one very serious question. That is how we should prevent the next pandemic from taking place.
The people of India see Taiwan as a friend, and you would be aware that Taiwan National Day was the #1 trend in India just a few days back. How do you describe your relationship with India, and what are your expectations from New Delhi?
Taiwan and India have relations getting better and better. And there is a fever here in Taiwan, craving for India. These couple of years, for example, the Indian movies, the Bollywood movies here in Taiwan are very popular. And I'm very glad to hear that Taiwan is becoming more popular in India as well. And I certainly hope that because of the interpersonal relations or people-to-people relations, that people are fond of each other, that can become a very good foundation for the two governments to build closer relationship with. The Chinese economic environment has been going downward in the last couple of years because of the trade war or other reasons. And many of the Taiwanese investors in China, they are thinking about moving out of China. And India happens to be a big country with a good population. And we certainly hope that some of the Taiwanese businessmen who are interested in making investment in places other than Taiwan, India can be a very attractive destination. So an FTA between Taiwan and India that can certainly improve the prospect for better trade and economic relations between Taiwan and India.
Do you also watch Bollywood films, and which are the films that are popular in Taiwan?
Oh, there's so many of them. To me personally, is Bahubali. I don't know whether other Taiwanese friends have seen this, but it's being reruns on our television. Every time I see that Bahubali movie, I told my wife not to turn the channel because I want to finish watching it again. And now I don't know how many times I've been watching it. It's just so fun to watch Indian movie. And this is another movie, a father who used to be a wrestler and trained his two daughters to be wrestler champions. Yes, and that is also very popular here in Taiwan. And there's another movie, Hindi Medium, and that is very popular here in Taiwan as well. There's countless of Indian movies that have been shown here in Taiwan. And for your information, we are thinking about having an Indian film festival in Taiwan right now.
That's very good to know. And I have to say your taste in films is very good. You've picked some of the best in Hindi cinema. Thank you very much, Dr. Wu, for your time. Your country has earned a lot of goodwill for itself. And we wish you all the best, and to the people of Taiwan.
Thank you very much.
Meanwhile, in Pakistan, what began as a movement for democratic rights seems to be turning into a civil war-like situation. On one hand is the Imran Khan government and Pakistan's powerful military generals. On the other, a united opposition and the Sindh police force. And caught in the middle of this Game of Thrones is the common man in Pakistan. Let's begin with the latest. The top police brass in Pakistan's Sindh province is revolting. On Tuesday night, several high-ranking police officials applied for a protest leave of sorts, which has now been deferred for 10 days. Among those who applied for leave were 2 additional inspector generals and 7 deputy inspector generals, at least 6 senior superintendents of the Sindh police. Now, on your screen are some of the letters written by these officials. Most of them mention the arrest of PMLN leader Maryam Nawaz's husband, and how the High Command of Sindh police had been quote-unquote ridiculed and mishandled. They talk about how the events unfolded and how they've demoralized the police force. Here's what happened. Maryam Nawaz was in Karachi for the protest. She was lodged in a hotel with her husband, Captain Safdar Awan. In the wee hours of October 19th, Captain Awan was arrested. The Karachi police broke into his room. The arrest took place shortly after Maryam Nawaz delivered a fiery speech at an opposition rally.
कपड़े तब्दील कर रहे थे कि मुझे दरवाज़ा तोड़ने की आवाज़ें आई और उन्होंने वो जो सिक्योरिटी लैच होता है दरवाजे का उसको तोड़ा, ज़ोर से ज़बरदस्ती से उसको तोड़ा और कमरे के अंदर आ गए। और मैं सो रही थी, मैं बेड में थी और सफदर ने उनको कहा कि आप अंदर मत आएं, मैं बाहर आ रहा हूँ, आप अंदर मत आएं, मैं अपनी दवाइयाँ ले रहा हूँ क्योंकि वो डायबिटिक है, इंसुलिन डिपेंडेंट है। तो उन्होंने कहा मैं अपनी दवाई ले लूँ, मैं आपके साथ चलता हूँ, आप अंदर मत आएं, लेकिन वो फिर भी अंदर आ गए वो अंदर आ गए और सफदर को गिरफ्तार करके ले गए.
Now this is where it gets interesting. Just before Captain Safdar's arrest, a kidnapping took place in Karachi. Who was kidnapped? The Inspector General of the Sindh Police, Mushtaq Meher. He was apparently taken away by Pakistani Army Rangers. What did they want from him? They reportedly forced him to issue an arrest warrant against Mariam Nawaz's husband. The Inspector General is yet to officially clarify on whether he was kidnapped or not. But the opposition in Pakistan says everybody knows he was.
Lips of everybody of Sindh, of every police officer, from the आपका HSO से लेके SP तक, SP से लेके DIGs तक, सब सवाल यही कर रहे थे कि कौन थे जिन्होंने हमारा IG के घर का सुबह सवेरे 2 बजे के बाद घेराव किया था. कौन थे वो 2 लोग जो IG के घर में गए और IG को कहां लेके गया था सुबह 4 बजे.
With stinging questions being raised by the opposition and a united resistance by the Sindh police force, the Pakistan army is under tremendous pressure. Its nefarious tactics are out in the open. Now it is trying to control the damage. On Tuesday, the Pakistan army chief had to dial Bilawal Bhutto. He wanted to stop the controversy from snowballing. And now look at this headline. The Pakistani media says that General Bajwa has ordered an inquiry into the Karachi incident. He's apparently directed the Karachi Corps commander to inquire into the circumstances that led to Captain Safdar Awan's arrest, which basically means the army will investigate itself. How does this even work? The opposition says it won't. And almost every major institution in the province of Sindh is extending its support to the opposition. The Sindh Bar Council, they want the Chief Justice of Pakistan to look into the matter. In a press release, the council stated, and I quote, "The judiciary of Pakistan has remained a silent spectator in the face of this creeping martial law and indeed is being seen as a facilitator of elements who wish to carry out extra constitutional roles." Then we have the Chief Minister of Sindh himself, Mr. Murad Ali Shah. He met senior police officials led by the Inspector General Mushtaq Meher, the man who is said to have been kidnapped. And the meeting is said to have lasted for several hours. The Chief Minister has announced a ministerial level probe into the incident. He says his government will not let the police force get demoralized. So we have a united opposition, nationwide protests, a rebellion by police officers, legal bodies raising questions, and an entire province up in arms. A civil war is brewing in Pakistan, they say. Will this spell the end of Imran Khan Niazi's rule? Meanwhile, the world is waiting for a vaccine. It is being seen as the ultimate weapon, the only way to end this pandemic. But an incident in South Korea has triggered a scare. 9 South Koreans have died after they got flu shots, bringing fears of vaccines back in focus. Vaccine denial and the anti-vax movement is not new. It's been around for a while, but the pandemic has strengthened it, and that is not good news. Here's a report.
South Korea's fight against the Wuhan virus is proving to be an uphill battle. The country has faced multiple waves of spikes in fresh infections. Now a vaccine program has triggered panic. 9 people who were administered flu shots in the country have died. The South Korean government started inoculating its population with flu vaccines. 30 million people are being given flu vaccines for free. That's because winter is coming. They don't want flu patients to add any burden to the health system. But why are flu shots killing people? So far, authorities haven't found any evidence that the deaths happened due to the flu vaccine. But people are worried.
As a mother of a child, I'm worried about the situation. I'll wait until the time that we can confirm the vaccine is safe, since we wear a mask due to COVID-19 and it also can prevent the flu.
This is just the kind of story scientists want to avoid. Anything that casts a doubt on vaccines will push people away from them. Last year, the World Health Organization named vaccine hesitancy as one of the top 10 threats to global health. In 2019, the anti-vaxxers were the fringe. In 2020, they've come to the mainstream. The pandemic has fueled their resurgence. Some of the world's worst affected countries have the highest number of vaccine deniers. A study in the United States found that 1 out of 3 Americans don't want to get a shot. The US has the highest number of cases in the world. Around the world, vaccine deniers are growing in number. According to a study published in The Lancet, confidence in vaccines has declined in countries like Afghanistan, Indonesia, Pakistan, the Philippines, and South Korea. Celebrity anti-vaxxers have only added to the crisis of credibility. Earlier this year, tennis star Novak Djokovic created a stir when he declared his opposition to a vaccine. He suggested that his return to tennis could be delayed if getting a coronavirus vaccine became mandatory to enter tennis competitions. A few months after that statement, Djokovic, along with his wife, tested positive for the Wuhan virus. What about South Korea? The deaths after flu shots haven't triggered a large public campaign against vaccines. Authorities see no reason to halt their program.
The coronavirus is more severe, so I decided to get vaccinated for my children and family's health. There are reports of deaths, but I think the coronavirus is much more serious problem. So I'm here to take care of my health first.
I keep seeing news reports about a few people who died after getting a free flu vaccine, and I'm worried about that. So I'm thinking of paying for a flu shot soon.
But anti-vaxxers remain active on social media. Their campaigns are backed by big donors, aided by celebrities, and the idea of freedom of choice. The fight for scientists who are pushing for mass vaccination programs will get tougher. Creating a vaccine will only be half the battle won. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
The dream project of the Rajapaksas in Sri Lanka has run into a legal hurdle. President Gotabaya Rajapaksa wants more powers for himself. He is pushing a new law, a law that would change the constitution of Sri Lanka and make him all-powerful. The Rajapaksas needed 2/3 majority in parliament to do this. So they fought an election seeking this majority and they won it. They got 2/3 majority, but they still cannot make the changes because the Supreme Court of Sri Lanka stands in their way. It says that such a law should be cleared by the people. There should be a referendum. We're talking about the 19th Amendment. The Rajapaksas promised to scrap it. And they said if they were voted to power, they'll do it. Now they are in power and their government has drafted the 20th Amendment. This amendment will empower the President and weaken the Prime Minister. The Supreme Court has largely cleared the law, but it has raised a red flag over 4 clauses. And the court says these provisions need the approval of the public, which is through a referendum. The Supreme Court's orders came after opposition parties and civil society appealed. They filed 39 petitions in all to challenge the new law. So why is the 20th Amendment so contentious? Because it gives President Rajapaksa unbridled powers. The President, if this amendment happens, the President will be able to dissolve the Parliament after 1 year. He will have a say in the appointment of judges and other top officials. The Auditor General of Sri Lanka will not be able to inspect the offices of the President and Prime Minister, among others. And people with dual citizenship will be allowed to become members of Parliament. So the Prime Minister's office and the Cabinet will be weakened. The President will be able to change ministers at will. In the case of the Rajapaksas, this may not matter very much because one brother is the President, the other is the Prime Minister. The opposition is protesting against these proposals. They believe that with these changes, the legislature, the Parliament will be reduced to a rubber stamp. And they're also objecting to the clause about dual citizenship people with dual citizenship entering the parliament. They say this provision will be used by President Rajapaksa to get his third brother, Basil, into the legislature. Basil Rajapaksa is the younger brother of Mahinda and Gotabaya Rajapaksa. He has both American and Sri Lankan citizenship. Now, these proposals have been opposed by the opposition, of course, but they have received opposition from the most unlikely of quarters. A section of the powerful Buddhist clergy is against the constitutional changes in Sri Lanka. 2 chapters of monks say the 20th Amendment would, quote-unquote, deal a death blow to democracy in Sri Lanka. They believe the new system will not have a balance of power between the legislature, the executive and the judiciary. And this is a very significant statement because when the Rajapaksas fought the last election, they had the blessing of Buddhist monks. President Rajapaksa is seen as a champion of the Buddhist Sinhalese majority of Sri Lanka. Last year, he took oath of office at a Buddhist temple outside Colombo. And his critics said that the return of the Rajapaksas could lead to the rise of majoritarianism in Sri Lanka. Since 1978, Sri Lanka has been ruled by powerful executive presidents. That changed in the year 2015. That changed with the 19th Amendment, the one they want to scrap. This amendment strengthened the parliament and the prime minister. Independent commissions were put in charge of judiciary appointments, the police, public services, and the conduct of elections. The Rajapaksas want to change all of this and take Sri Lanka back to the past. What has air pollution cost humanity? 6.7 million lives, including 500,000 newborns. That's just in 1 year's time. Air pollution is the 4th leading cause of deaths in the world, and this time around, its threat has been compounded by the Wuhan virus pandemic. 500,000 newborns died in 2019. Our next report tells you more.
An invisible killer is on the prowl. Its hunting ground, the Indian subcontinent and sub-Saharan Africa. We are talking about air pollution. In 2019, it claimed the lives of around 500,000 newborns. More than 116,000 of those deaths were in India. Let the figures sink in. More than 500,000 newborn babies dead because of bad air. These numbers were published by the US-based Health Effects Institute. They discovered a correlation between a mother's exposure to air pollution and the risk of neonatal mortality. And they blamed traditional cooking fuels. The noxious fumes from dung cakes, charcoal and crop residue are the biggest killers. These are harmful for all human beings. But for an unborn baby, they can be lethal. Exposure to noxious fumes accounted for more than 60% of infant deaths. Most newborns suffered complications related to low birth weight. Air pollution is the 4th leading cause of deaths in the world. Last year, it claimed the lives of 6.7 million people. Most of us associate pollution with thick smog and plumes of smoke. Visible symbols, but the actual killer is far smaller, invisible to the naked eye. They are called PM 2.5 particles, less than 2.5 micrometers in diameter. Small but lethal in the long run. In 2019, exposure to PM 2.5 killed more than 4 million people. 1/4 of these deaths were in India. Air pollution is all the more threatening in present times. Experts believe it could compound the risk from COVID-19, a 2-front attack on human lungs. Air pollution also weakens the immune system, leaving it vulnerable to COVID-19. This year's worldwide lockdowns have reduced air pollution. There were fears of a resurgence in the post-lockdown period, but the second wave of infections has once again scaled back activities. It will be months before the lockdown's impact on air pollution will be evident. This is a time for humanity to introspect. Do the human costs of pollution justify the economic gains? Bureau Report, WION World is One.
If you've vote for Biden, he will surrender your jobs to China. He will surrender your future to the virus. I'm moving heaven and earth to safeguard our seniors from the China virus. This election is a simple choice. If Biden wins, China wins, all these other countries win, we get ripped off by everybody. China unleashed the virus onto the world, and only a Trump administration will hold them accountable.
He pointed fingers at Joe Biden for his son's business dealings with China. He said Joe Biden will surrender American jobs to China. He said a victory of Joe Biden will be a victory of China, and that only the Trump administration can hold China accountable for the pandemic. But now the US president's own link with China has hit his campaign like a bombshell. The report was published in the New York Times. It reveals how Trump's business history is filled with overseas financial deals, and some of them involve the Chinese state. The US president is said to have spent an entire decade pursuing unsuccessful deals with China. Will these findings compromise Trump's case? Or is this another flash in the pan? Let's examine the case. What is the charge against Donald Trump? The first big revelation: Donald Trump maintains bank accounts in 3 foreign countries: Britain, Ireland and China. Is this a problem? For some reason, the accounts are not mentioned anywhere in Trump's public financial disclosures. What's there to hide? The Chinese account is controlled by the Trump International Hotels Management. Between 2013 and 2015, it is said to have paid more than $188,000 in taxes. This money was paid in China to get licensing deals. Mr. Alan Garton is a lawyer for the Trump organization. He said the company opened an account with a Chinese bank which had offices in the US to pay local taxes. Which Chinese bank is this? Trump's team has refused to reveal the name. But here's something else that's interesting. Until January last year, 2019, China's biggest state-controlled bank had rented 3 floors in Trump Towers. This was the Industrial and Commercial Bank of China. So is this the bank where Donald Trump has an account? There's no clarity over this. Let's tell you about the second big revelation. Donald Trump has long sought a licensing deal in China, and the efforts are said to go back as far back as 2006. Donald Trump is said to have filed trademark applications in Hong Kong and mainland China. And here's the interesting bit. Most of the approvals by the Chinese regime came after he became the president of America. In June 2017, China approved 9 Trump trademarks it had previously rejected. The headline is on your screen. Then in 2018, China granted 18 more trademarks to Donald Trump and for his daughter Ivanka Trump's personal businesses. The approval came after Ivanka had joined the White House staff. What you see on your screen are images of a few trademarks that were approved by the Chinese regime for the president and his daughter. Besides these 2 big revelations, there are a number of others that tell you how Donald Trump has always maintained close business ties with China. In 2008, he pursued an office tower project in China that never got off the ground. In 2012, his business efforts escalated with the opening of a Shanghai office. The same year, Trump's tax records show that his company claimed $84,000 in deductions for travel costs, legal fees and office expenses. In 2016, a shell company run by a Chinese couple bought 11 units for $3.1 million in Las Vegas, a Las Vegas star owned by Donald Trump. And shortly after he won the presidential election in 2016, Trump reportedly sold a Manhattan penthouse for $15.8 million to Chinese-American businesswoman. Now here's the thing, China is one of the biggest issues in the 2020 presidential election. From the trade war to constant barbs over the origin of the pandemic, Donald Trump has always portrayed himself as the savior of America and Joe Biden as China's puppet. But these revelations tell you an entirely different story. They show how both men may have just been equally guilty of the same crime. Both of them have had close business links with the Chinese state, and none of them can act holier than thou. What's in a name, they say? A lot if you ask the residents of Asbestos. It's a small town in Canada. Unfortunately for its residents, It was named after a cancer-causing safety hazard. For years, these people have had trouble explaining this to visitors, but not anymore. The city has voted to choose a new name. But Asbestos is not alone on this list. Cities have been renamed for far stranger reasons. Our next report has some stories.
This is Asbestos, an actual city in Quebec, Canada. Or at least it was, because residents of this city have now voted to rename it. And you can understand why. Being named after a safety hazard isn't exactly in vogue. But how does a city get named Asbestos in the first place?
Is located on a gigantic asbestos deposit. And in the 19th century, the Royal Mail just decided to start calling that place Asbestos.
The town was built in the 1870s. Its primary aim was to support the asbestos mine nearby. For years, asbestos was considered valuable. It was widely used in construction, but in the 1970s, there was a paradigm shift. Asbestos was recognized as a safety hazard. Multiple lung ailments, including lung cancer, were linked to it. Today, 67 countries have banned its use. For residents here, explaining their town's name had become part of their lives.
Every time you say, especially in United States, that you're coming from asbestos, they're always afraid that it will be poison.
The Canadian town voted 51.5% in favor of renaming. Everyone over the age of 14 was given a vote. The new name they agreed to is Val des Sources, meaning Valley of the Sources. Doesn't exactly roll off your tongue though, but beats being named Asbestos any day. The new name refers to the town's location on the confluence of 3 lakes. It has been approved by the town council, and a couple more bureaucratic hoops left before Asbestos is history. But this Canadian town is not alone. Over the years, many communities have renamed their towns for a number of reasons, like Dish, a city in Texas. It's changed its name after a satellite deal in which all residents were given free 10-year subscriptions. Kitchener, another town in Canada, it was initially called Berlin due to the influx of German immigrants. Or Sleepy Hollow in New York. In 1996, residents of Tarrytown adopted the name Sleepy Hollow. The town was the setting for the famous short story The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
That note, it's a wrap. We're leaving you with Gravitas images. Thanks for watching.
Switch it off.